Good morning, kindergarten. Welcome to today's rest and story time. So we are up to chapter number 3 in our new adventure with Jack and Annie. We know we're on book number 22, Revolutionary War on Wednesday. So far, we have learned that they have arrived somewhere where something is going on. We haven't learned exactly where they are yet. We know that they started walking because they saw a group of people nearby and they saw some soldiers. They're not sure which side of the war the soldiers are on, so where we left off last, they were tiptoeing carefully to go see and check them out and see who they are. So let's see if we get some answers today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3, It's Time. Annie lifted up her long dress and ran to a tree close to the river. Jack held on to his hat and ran after her. They peeked out from behind the tree. More snow was flurrying in the twilight. "Are they redcoats?" whispered Annie. "I can't tell," Jack whispered back. In the flickering firelight, the men didn't seem to be wearing uniforms at all. They were wearing ragged pants and coats. Some of them had their feet wrapped up with tattered cloth. "Come on," Annie whispered. She ran to a tree closer to the river, and Jack followed. "This is as close as we should get, Annie," Jack whispered. "But I can't tell what they're wearing," said Annie. She crept forward and hid behind a bush. "No closer than that," Jack whispered. But Annie didn't listen. She took off again, crouching behind a rock. She was only about 10 feet away from the campfire. "Oh, brother, she is way too close now," Jack thought to himself. But he took a deep breath and ran to the rock. When he joined Annie, he looked up and grinned. "This is like playing hide and seek," she smiled. "This is not a game, Annie," Jack whispered back. "This is a war. I'm serious." "I am serious," said Annie, her voice rising louder. "Shh," said Jack. But it was too late. One of the men had heard her and stood up and looked around. Uh-oh. One of the soldiers saw them. Let's see what happens. Or heard them, I should say. "What's the matter, Captain?" a man asked. "I heard something," the captain said. He held up his musket. Jack stopped breathing. "Who is there?" the captain shouted. Jack looked at Annie. She shrugged. "We're caught now," she whispered. "Who is there?" the captain shouted again. "Just 2 kids," Annie answered back in her smallest voice. "Come out and show yourself," the captain said. Jack and Annie stood up from behind the rock, holding up their hands. "We come in peace." In the shadowy twilight, the captain moved towards them. "Who are you?" he asked them. "We're Jack and Annie," Annie answered. "Were you spying on us?" he asked them. "No, we weren't spying. We just wanted to know if you were the Redcoats or the Patriots," Jack told him. "Which one do you want us to be?" the captain answered. "The Patriots," Jack said. "Well, good, because we are the Patriots," the captain answered. "Thank goodness," Annie said, smiling. The captain smiled back. "Where are you from?" His voice had softened, and he wasn't angry anymore. "We're visiting relatives nearby. We're from Frog Creek, Pennsylvania," said Annie. "That's amazing! My farm is in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. Where is your farm?" the captain said. Jack did not know how to answer him. "It's near the Frog Creek woods," Annie said. "All farms are near the woods. What do you mean?" the captain said, laughing. But just then someone came running up from the river. "Captain, it's time!" The captain turned around to the other men. "It's time!" he shouted. The soldiers put out the fire, stood up with their muskets on their shoulder. "It's time for what, Captain?" Annie asked. "It's time to meet with our commander-in-chief, and time for you to return to your family, so your mother and father don't worry about you." "Yes, sir," said Jack. "It is nice to see children. I was trying to write a letter to my own son and daughter, but I don't know what to say," the captain told them. "Just tell them that you miss them," said Annie. The captain smiled. "And I do, indeed." He turned around and headed up the riverbank, with his men following behind. Soon they all disappeared into the cold mist. Jack looked around. What do we do now? More than anything, he wanted to go home. Now the soldiers were gone, the riverbank was lonely and a little scary. "We have to find something to send," said Annie. "I know. Maybe we should follow the captain and his men. Maybe they will lead us somewhere." Jack wasn't sure Annie had a good idea, but it was better than nothing. "Okay, but let's try not to get caught this time," Jack said. he and Annie took off running through the frozen twilight, following the snowy footprints of the American patriots. All right, Chapter 4, Commander-in-Chief. Jack and Annie ran along the riverbank. The wind was whooshing over the cold water. Wet snowflakes were hissing in the dark. Jack heard other sounds. He heard voices, lots of voices. He and Annie came upon hundreds and hundreds of soldiers gathered near the river. Many were carrying oil lanterns. The lanterns gave an eerie glow in the night. "The captain and his men must be here somewhere," said Jack. There were boats shaped like big canoes tied near the river, and there were men leading horses and cannons onto the boat. "What are they doing, Jack?" Annie asked. Jack pulled out the Revolutionary War book and read aloud on a whisper. "On Wednesday, December 25th, 1776. "December 25th? That's Christmas," said Annie. "Today is Christmas." "Cool," said Jack. He kept on reading. "On Wednesday, December 25th, 1776, the Patriots were losing the war. Ragged and tired, many of them were ready to just give up. But then something would happen that would turn the whole war around. About 2,400 American patriots gathered on the west bank of the Delaware River in Pennsylvania. They prepared to cross the river on a secret mission." "A secret mission? Oh, man," said Jack. He started to pull out his notebook when all of a sudden he heard, "Attention, troops! The Commander-in-Chief!" a soldier shouted. Jack and Annie turned around to see a man in a dark cape and a three-cornered hat riding up on a white horse. The Commander-in-Chief loomed above the crowd of soldiers. His cape flapped behind him in the wind. He sat calm with dignity on the back of his horse. There he is. And even from a distance, Jack couldn't help but think that Commander-in-Chief looked very familiar. Very, very familiar. But he just didn't know why. "A dangerous mission lies before you all," the man shouted. "But I want you to have courage. Remember the words of Thomas Paine." The Commander-in-Chief held up a piece of paper and read it to his men. Who do you think that Commander-in-Chief might be? Why does he look so familiar? "These are the times that will try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and the thanks of man and women." "Wow, this is great," whispered Annie. Listening to the powerful words, Jack could feel himself rising too. "The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph," the Commander-in-Chief read. "What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value." There was silence, as if everyone was thinking about the words the man had read. And then the soldiers were clapping and cheering. They were not tired anymore. They were eager and brave and ready to set out on their mission. The Commander-in-Chief saluted his men and steered the horse towards the river. And as the horse walked right past Jack, he looked up and gasped. Of course! He knew he saw that face somewhere, on the dollar bill and on the quarter. That's when Jack grabbed onto Annie's arm. "Annie, I know who the Commander-in-Chief is. He is George Washington." How cool is that? They're about to meet George Washington. How exciting of an adventure did this turn out to be, right? So chapter 5 that we'll read tomorrow is called The Letter. Ooh, the letter. Who might have a letter? And could that be what Jack and Annie need? Something to send? You do send letters in the mail, right? So maybe that could be it. How exciting! So let me know what you thought about today's chapters. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. And it's a great day to meet George Washington because what are we celebrating today? The USA! How cool! So because we're celebrating that and we got to meet the very first president in the book, I think that's a pretty awesome day already. So I hope you enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day and I'll see you right back here tomorrow for chapters 5 and 6. Bye, my friends.